Texting while driving has become a bigger and bigger problem, with the number of both car wrecks and lives lost continuing to go up. We had seen years and years of lower numbers of traffic fatalities have been going down because fewer people are drinking and driving, cars are getting safer and safer, and yet all of a sudden now you see the number of wrecks going up. And many people believe it has to do with distracted driving through things like texting and driving. Now, there's a pending law in New York that is aiming to curtail some of this rise, especially in the New York area. And we're going to talk about that and the technology that it rests on. But first, I want to give you an idea of the magnitude of the problem that we have to address. According to the U.S. Department of Transportation, half of drivers between 18 and 24 admit they text or email while driving. That is literally millions of people at any given time are risking accident for themselves, risking plowing into a pedestrian, hitting another car, and we see that damage almost every day. Statistics show that if you are communicating by text while driving a vehicle, you are 23 times more likely to crash. And yet people do it like it's nothing. Hey, I gotta beat this level of Candy Crush. That's a sexy text. I gotta respond to it. They don't realize the risk that they're taking. And by the way, I talked about the drinking while driving. There's a lot of overlap here. Those who occupied themselves with text messaging in a study, they actually had people do this while attempting to drive, either by reading or writing them, had slower reaction times by 35%. By comparison, drunk drivers displayed a 12% decrease.
Wow.
So 3 times worse than drinking while driving. And it took so long for our society to accept how dangerous drinking while drunk or buzzed would be. And when you talk to young people and you tell them that was socially acceptable for a long time, people would fight any attempt to regulate it. They think that you're crazy because everybody accepts that it's dangerous to do that. And yet those same people, they're checking the news and they're checking Instagram while they're plowing down the road, not realizing that in a very real way, they're effectively going blindfolded in many cases due to the reaction speed limit. They're going blindfolded for the distance of a football field. And they don't realize it because they're in this car with 30 airbags. And in a lot of cases, they're not going to get harmed if they get in a crash, although many unfortunately do. So that's the problem. Let's talk about the potential solutions. So there's a New York bill that would rely on technology developed by Cellebrite, which is an Israeli corporation. Using this, following an accident, drivers would have to give up their phones to law enforcement who would use the Textalyzer, that's what they're calling it, like a breathalyzer on the scene to find out when the phone had last been used. Now, obviously, there are privacy concerns. Yes. Now, while the test would reveal if usage had recently occurred, Ars Technica, which is a tech blog, reports it would maintain the phone owner's privacy, keeping conversations, contacts, numbers, photos, and application data out of the public domain. So they wouldn't even necessarily know what applications you had been using. It's simply a track of had you been using the phone at all. And the reason that that's necessary is that there have been recent studies showing that there are attempts to track whether people had been using their phones, and that's what resulted in a car crash. Unfortunately, the way that they figure out if it was used is very often by asking the driver, were you using your phone? And the driver, in a lot of cases, says no, because they don't want to be responsible for the crash.
Well, look, I think that there are ways to solve this that don't rely on technology that I honestly think is an invasion of privacy. I don't like I don't care what Ars Technica's, analysis of this is. I don't want to hand over my phone to law enforcement. I just don't. Okay?
Yeah, I generally wouldn't want to either.
But I do agree that this is a serious issue. And if the consequences of this issue could be worse than getting drunk and then getting on the road, well then I feel like the penalties involved should be just as serious as drinking and driving, right? And I think as soon as you do that, people will take it a lot more seriously and they won't do it, right?
Yeah.
Because look, I'm going to be honest about myself and my own behavior. I'm guilty of this, right? The more you talk about it, the more I realize I'm an idiot and I need to stop doing it. But part of the reason why I don't take it as seriously is because right now it's just a citation. Citation sucks, right? But I feel like it's not the end of the world if I get a citation. I do feel like it's the end of the world if I have to spend a night in jail or if I have to spend $10,000 on getting an attorney and defending myself.
Yeah.
And that's the case with drunk driving. So I have no problem with increasing the penalties associated with texting and driving. I just don't want to give up more of my privacy.
Yeah. Yeah, and look, there are other ways that you could try to go about this. I mean, there's various theories about how you could have cell phones be, in terms of certain applications, disabled while the car is moving or something like that. I don't know how exactly that would work. The the solution to this, at the end of the day, is not going to be technology, because technology can be circumvented. You have to get people to realize what a problem it is.
Yes.
It's taken decades to get people to realize that you can't drive drunk. A lot of people still think that, hey, I had 2 drinks,
Yeah.
and that'll be fine. And a lot of people die as a result of that, both themselves when they're driving and they hit and kill people. People need to accept how dangerous it is. They need to pledge not to do it themselves, but I don't even think at the end of the day that's going to be the most important thing. You have to make a stand when you see people doing it.
Yeah.
It doesn't
Shame
work
them.
when they're in a different car, because if you see someone texting and driving, you try to say anything, you will see how strongly people want to protect their ability to text and drive. I almost got hit by a woman a while back, and so after she almost hits us, we pull up next to her, and I shout to her, "You shouldn't be using your phone," and she flipped me off, as you'd expect people would. Didn't matter that she'd almost potentially killed people or killed herself or wrecked her vehicle or ours. So when you get in a car and you see somebody using their phone, tell them, "I'm not driving with you while you're doing that," the same way you would if they were holding a beer bottle while driving. I know that it's gonna be difficult to push past that uncomfortable feeling, but you have to do it because people are literally dying every day because of this.